So we're a little over 48 hours until the Seattle Mariners season starts. And I thought it would be fun. Fun is one way to put it, to kind of preview the positions. And I thought we'd start with the infield. We'll do an infield video, we'll do an outfield video, and then we'll do just a pitching video. And then I'll probably give you my predictions for the season and all that stuff as well. It's a lot of content to put out in about 48 hours, but I'm feeling pretty good right now, so I'm feeling up to it. So I'll give you a 1 through 5 rating on each infield position, and we're going to include catcher for this one. How confident I am in that position going forward. There's some that are going to have some pretty low grades. But let's start at catcher. And if I could go 4.5, I probably would. But I'm going to go 4. And it's not because of anything Cal Raleigh has done, because Cal Raleigh is one of the very best players on the Seattle Mariners. If you wanted to argue that Cal Raleigh is the best player on the Seattle Mariners, I disagree with you, but I would get it. What Cal Raleigh gives the Seattle Mariners behind the plate and at the plate can't be overstated. He is one of the most underrated overall players. I almost said overrated because I had the word overall in my head. Cal Raleigh is a star. Big Dumper is a star. And Big Dumper is going to get there's going to be somebody dumping a lot of money in his pool. That's how I always picture money going in for some reason. It's in a big, giant pool. He is one of the, if not the most important Seattle Mariners. The reason I put 4 instead of 5 is because and we're not talking about Cal Raleigh, we're talking about catcher. If there was an injury to Raleigh, boy, they're in trouble. Because Mitch Garver isn't a starting catcher. Mitch Garver is a $12 million backup catcher who's going to get some playing time at DH too. That's something, but I don't have a lot of confidence in the things behind Raleigh. So that's my reason for the 4, because as long as Raleigh's healthy and is able to give you 120 games behind the plate, 115 games behind the plate, 110, whatever, and then 20 or so games as the designated hitter, I feel great. I feel great about the production there. But I'm going to deduct a point because I am very worried about what's behind Raleigh. If Raleigh was to get hurt, and I am knocking on every piece of wood possible, just going nuts. Nobody knocks like this. Knock, knock. That's punching. They are in trouble. They would have to make a deal. I mean, beyond have to make a deal. I'm a little surprised they're not going with 3 catchers to begin the year, but that's just the way it is. And I think Garver is a very talented backup catcher, but I don't have a lot of confidence in him at the plate based on what he was last year. Bounce back is certainly possible, but I don't have a lot of confidence. All right, let's go first to third. First base, I'm going, if I could go 2.5 again, I probably would. I'm going to go 3. If you take away 2 stretches for Luke Raley, he was pretty dang good last year. Pretty dang good. Now, do I have some concerns about him against left-handed pitching? You bet. But I don't have those same concerns for Donovan Solano. I think those 2 combine to be a pretty good first baseman. Now, you can't completely ignore the fact that Raley has been hot and cold. That was true with the Rays as well. He had the breakout season in 2023, but it ended horribly. And I think there was a reason. Obviously, there was a reason they were willing to move him. Number 1, they liked Jose Caballero. And number 2, he stunk at the end of the year. So you can't ignore that. You can't ignore that Solano is a 37-year-old who doesn't hit for a ton of power. And you also can't ignore the fact that Luke Raley didn't play very much first base in the spring. And maybe I talked about this on Mollywop Monday. Maybe they're so confident in Raley at first they didn't feel the need to put him there, and they wanted him to get in the outfield to, have that feel, because it certainly would be easier to acclimate to first base than it would be to the outfield. I'm not saying first base is easy. I'm also not saying it's incredibly hard. #Moneyball. It would be easier to acclimate to first base. So maybe that's what they're doing. But I don't know. And we have to include Rowdy Tellez in this, who has not yet been informed as of this recording whether or not he's made the team. With the release of Mitch Haniger, we'll talk about that in the outfield video. It sure seems like that opens a spot. Now, you could also argue that opens a spot for someone else, and we'll talk about that player when we get there. But for now, I think Tellez is part of this team. And I get the frustration with it. I also think it's worth the look, because this is not Tommy La Stella coming in to be your DH, right? This is different. And I want to point out something, and I got to pause this real quick because I wasn't smart enough to pull up the stats, but I want to talk to you about what type of player Rowdy Tellez was over the summer. Rowdy Tellez in the first half of 2024 hit 243, 297, 383. Not very good. The second half of the year, he hit 243, 303, 405. That's a 708 OPS compared to 680. That's not too bad. It's sad that that's not too bad, but that's just kind of the way baseball works. But that doesn't really tell you the story of Rowdy Tellez in the summer versus Rowdy Tellez to begin and end the year. Okay. In April, March, I still laugh that Baseball Reference lists that. 30 games and 92 plate appearances. Absolutely irregular. He hit 198, 283, 259. Oof. And yet, he was so much worse than that in May. He gets 12 starts. He appears in 18 games. His regular playing time goes down. He hit 143, 160, 163. He had one extra base hit and 50 at-bats, and he had a 323 OPS. 323 is a very good batting average and a very crappy OPS. He stunk out loud. But then June comes along, okay? From June to August, he has OPSs of 926, 916, and 813. And that is over 19 games, 18 games, and 20 games. Excuse me. That's over 19 starts, 18 starts, and 20 starts. That's as a regular. He had a 3-month stretch there where Rowdy Tellez was a really good hitter. A really good hitter. Now, it ends terrible. September, 13 games. He hits 116, slugs 209, 464. I bring this up because there is close to a 70-game sample of Rowdy Tellez being an awesome hitter. Now, there is also a 60-game sample of him being, can we use another DH for you? So there's no denying that Rowdy Tellez has been more bad than good, but there's good. There has been good. So I understand why they're taking this chance, because the worst thing is you move on from Rowdy Tellez. He was signed as an NRI, non-roster invite. There was very little expectation. He's looked good this spring. The numbers weren't great until recently, but all of the reports and, my limited time getting to watch, there was hard contact. The Savant page, by the way, suggests that he was a little bit unlucky in his terrible months too. So I get it. But there's a lot of question marks still at first base. Can Luke Raley play the position full time? Is Donovan Solano going to hit for enough power to justify being a middle of the order guy against left-handers? And what is Rowdy Tellez? I get it. So that's why I'm closer to a 2 than I said a 3. I'll stick with a 3. That's why I'm closer to a 3 than a 4. but I prefer to go 2.5 if I'm being completely honest with you. Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with the first base position. Second base. Remember Robinson Cano? Some of you remember Robinson Cano. Don't have nice things to say. I would be so happy to have Robinson Cano's production right now. I'd be so happy. I got a cough. Sorry, had to cough. And think more about how much I love Robinson Cano and miss him. I know steroids, yada yada, but boy, he was good, and boy, he was a vast improvement what they've gotten at second base. So right now, it looks like to me that Ryan Bliss is going to be your starter at second base with Dylan Moore as your super utility infielder. And I'm glad that's the decision they're making based on how the roster is now. And you can't help but note that Cole Young is probably going to be that starting second baseman at some point, right? Cole Young is, in my opinion, their third best prospect. I just put up my top 15 list for Mile Wide enthusiasts, $4.99 a month to join. Please check it out if you are willing. But you can't ignore that, right? But I do think Ryan Bliss has more upside than maybe people are giving him credit. There were some really good moments during that 2024 season. Some really impressive at-bats. I never felt like the moment was too big for him. Some questions about talent? Sure. Like, he's 5'7". He's listed at 5'7". By the way, Rowdy Tellez and Ryan Bliss standing next to each other at first and second base. What a great buddy cop comedy. I've made that joke a few times, but yeah. I would love to see it. And there are some issues with Tellez's hands defensively. There's no issue with range, but there are some question marks about his mechanics in the field, and he will boot the occasional grounder or two. But he's certainly an improvement over Jorge Polanco defensively. And no, he doesn't have Polanco's offensive upside, but he works. He makes pitchers work. There's enough hard contact for me to see an above average hit tool someday. Maybe not this year, but someday. And there's some sneaky pop. I like him playing second base more than Dylan Moore. And sometimes I feel like a Dylan Moore hater, but I just don't have a lot of confidence in Dylan Moore as an everyday player. I like him against lefties. I like him as an option off the bench. I like him being able to fill in to give people rest. He's not a starter to me. He's not a starter to me. So, all that being said, my number for second base is 1. An easy 1. Because I don't know what you're going to get from Bliss. I can't completely count on Young being a great option to start because most guys struggle. And I've seen enough of Dylan Moore to know he's not a regular. A good super utility guy, but not a regular. So I'm going 1. Shortstop. This is a tough one. I'm going to go 2. I thought about 1. And again, I've been hard on JP Crawford, in part because I have high expectations, and in part because I just don't see, and a lot of metrics back me up. Some don't. I don't see the defense. And I have concerns about how well that's going to age. Of course I do. But JP Crawford, for the most part, was a pretty bad hitter. Now, I don't think he's as bad as he was for most of 2024, but I know he's not as good as he was in 2023. And I hope I'm wrong, obviously. But when you combine a deteriorating defensive skill set that I wasn't a huge fan of to begin with, and you combine that with middling offensive ability, good approach, developing a little more power as he gets older and swings with a little more loft, but I have real doubts that he's a starting shortstop on what should be a World Series contending team. Whether it is or not, we'll talk about. But I have real doubts about him being a starting shortstop. I've seen just enough, more than just enough. I've seen enough flashes to say, and at times longer than flashes. 2023 was a really good year for him offensively. To say it's possible. But I can't think of many worse middle infield combos right now on contending teams or teams that should be contending anyway. I'm going to. And then finally, third base. 1. Look, Jorge Polanco has looked great with the bat since returning from his knee surgery. The reports I've gotten defensively have been bad. And playing, I mean, he's played third base before, but I can't do anything but 1 here. He was so bad at the plate last year. And now you have defensive questions. And this is the one position I think it's inexcusable that they didn't upgrade. Now, I don't hate bringing Polanco back. I don't hate it at all. But bringing Polanco back should have meant upgrades elsewhere. And they did not. Oh, Lord, did they not. So, to recap, it's a 4 at catcher. It's a 3 at first base. I wish I could go 2.5. I set my own rules. I don't know why I can't, but 1 at second base, 2 at shortstop, 1 at third base out of 5. This has a chance to be a disastrous infield. Now, if everything goes right, chance to be a pretty good one. And there have been, with the exception of second base, really good moments for all of these guys. There's been some real bad too. Real bad. So it is not the group I am the most confident in. Have a lot of faith in the outfield. We'll talk about it. Obviously, the starting rotation. But for now, we can just talk about the infield. Tell me which numbers I got wrong. Please tell me which numbers I need right, because I love praise. Can't believe this was an 18-minute video. I love you all. Be back soon.